Hey, it's Jen. Welcome to my website. For my cultural analysis project, my main goal is to define culture in terms of the Southern Gothic movement, and I wanted to choose this movement because throughout high school and college, I haven't been exposed to it, and I thought it would be very interesting to dive deep and see how is culture defined. So, based on the cultural literatures and cultures presentation, you see that Charles Young defines culture as an integrated pattern of human knowledge, belief, and behavior. Now, I think that is very vague, but also true, because what culture is basically, in my words, it's a collection of everything that you grew up with, plus everything that has happened in your family, and then everything that you experience as a growing person. So I have chosen 7 texts that I think definitely fulfill the Southern Gothic movement, and hopefully by the end of this, I will have defined what culture is in this movement. To start off, I chose Flowers by Alice Walker. This story started out with a young girl skipping through the woods, and at the end she found a dead man in the woods with a noose around its neck. So I think this one definitely does fit Southern Gothic because A, dead guy in the woods, that's pretty Gothic and scary for a young girl, and B, it has to deal with everything that's happened in the Southern past with racism and slavery and lynching, and all of these themes are definitely going away but are still present in today's society. They haven't left. So I think this story helps define the culture of Southern Gothic with all of those aspects of the past coming back up, and there's still the race element present in lots of society today, especially in the South. I also chose Everyday Use by Alice Walker. This story started out with 2 daughters, and one of them was very successful. She went to school, she wanted to continue her education, and she always looked nice, was finding relationships. And then the other daughter stayed at home, and she wasn't that quote successful. But the end moral of this story is that the successful daughter, Dee, she wanted to almost run away from her family, and she was almost embarrassed by her other sister and her mother for how they lived, because they weren't successful. They appreciated where they came from, they appreciated where they lived, and they had their own traditions. Having a place to belong is a very prominent theme in Southern Gothic because everybody has their own place. It seems like everybody has their own roles, and when the daughter Dee was trying to run away, it just kind of emphasized how important it was to stay connected with your family. So the next story I chose was A Rose for Emily by William Faulkner, and I chose this one because it really showed a sense of community divide between younger and older generation, as well as a sense of leftover racism. There was mention of the Negro, who was a man who helped out at Miss Emily's house. He took in the mail and seemed to be a housekeeper almost. So just the fact that they were calling him the Negro shows that there's definitely still some residual racism. The split between generations was that the younger generation wanted Miss Emily to contribute and pay her taxes and do whatever everybody else was doing. But she refused, and she was to herself. She didn't want anybody messing with her stuff, and she just wanted to stay where she was, and that's what she did. This work definitely does get Gothic because throughout the entire story, the younger generation was complaining about the smell, and we didn't know what the smell was until the very end of the story, when it was revealed that Miss Emily had actually killed her husband and kept him upstairs rotting away, and that was what the smell was. So that's definitely part Gothic and definitely fits the Southern Gothic movement. The next two poems that I chose are Nikki Rosa and Knoxville, Tennessee. And the two themes of these poems are really what Black wealth really is and what it means to be happy. I really like this quote from Nikki Rosa. It says, "Black love is black wealth, and they'll probably talk about my hard childhood and never understand that all the while I was quite happy." So what I took from this was that even though there are many poor families in the South, and many Black families too, it really doesn't matter where they come from, because if they're surrounded by the people they love, that's all that really matters. And even though it sounds awful to be poor and not have all the essentials that you might need, it really doesn't matter because they make the best out of their situation. I really like Knoxville, Tennessee too, because it was a short and sweet poem that basically listed all of the good things about the speaker's life. They said things from coming from Daddy's garden and homemade ice cream and the church picnic and going into the mountains and going barefoot and being warm. And like, that was just heartwarming because no matter what, it's all the memories that matter. And that's, I think, another huge part of Southern Gothic, is just Southern culture in general, is that it really doesn't matter what you have and what material things you have, but it's where you come from and what your experiences are. Like I said in the beginning, it's really about what memories you can make that are really important. Nikki Giovanni also wrote Ego Tripping, which I chose because it really sounds nice and song-like. It's a very intricate poem because there's a lot of metaphors that seem all historical, and they all show some sort of Black culture. For example, it talks about the Congo, building the Sphinx, sending ice ages to Europe, Sahara Desert, and many of these topics that she mentions are in Africa. So it almost shows what Africans have accomplished before coming to America. And it also shows that there's so much history behind everything that has adapted into what it is today. I think it shows a lot of where culture has developed and what parts of tradition there are. So the last and probably most Southern Gothic piece is Good Country People, and I chose this one because the language that's written is meant to be read in a Southern accent, and there's also the Gothic piece that Joy renames herself Hulga because she doesn't feel beautiful. She has an amputated leg that she lost in an accident, and now she wears a prosthetic. And then there's this man, Pointer, who starts selling Bibles. He claims that he's a good Christian, just selling Bibles, and he actually ends up charming Joy / Hulga and takes her out on a date. And the story ends with Pointer actually stealing her leg because he's a no-good thief, and inside of his Bibles are actually carved out little holes that he keeps drugs and he keeps alcohol, and he keeps all of the things that he steals from people who are gullible enough to believe him. And the story, Joy's kind of shocked and is like, I thought you were just good country people. It almost explains that Southern culture is supposed to be a simple life, and everybody's supposed to do what they claim they do, and if you're a good Christian, then you're just a good Christian. And it was kind of unexpected that this so-called Bible salesman was actually a thief, which is actually a really great disguise. So in the end, after analyzing all of these texts, I think that Southern culture is not so easily broken down. Obviously, there's a lot of community aspects as well as racial elements, and the Gothic part of things brings in a whole nother twist. I think family and tradition also have big roles in all of culture, because it really doesn't matter where you come from, but if you're surrounded by the people that you love, that's your version of wealth. That's all that's really important to you. I think that the definition to culture is absolutely ever changing. There's never gonna be a set answer to the question, what is culture? It's a collection of all your experiences, and everybody experiences different things, and they believe different things, and everybody's different. So that means everybody's version of culture is all gonna be different. And from my experience, that's all it is.